Welcome everyone to today's Observability Clinic, modernizing your Jenkins pipeline. I'm sure that's a big topic of interest because we know we have a lot of people out there that use Jenkins on a day-to-day basis to run their pipelines. But today we talk about breaking the monolithic pipeline with Dynatrace Cloud Automation. I'm always inviting guests, and today I have a repeat guest, Rene Forstner from NTT DATA. Hello, Rene. How are you?
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. The two of us, we've been working in that space of, we call it cloud automation. We will also talk a lot about Captain today, the open source project that has also influenced some of the technology that Dynatrace brought into cloud automation. So thank you so much for being an advocate. And today the topic is really something that we see with a lot of our users is they're using tools like Jenkins, but really want to modernize it. And without further ado, I want to make sure that you get the time. Folks, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this on YouTube or on Dynatrace University, if you have questions, you have our names. I'm sure you'll find a way to get a hold of us. You can also use community.dynatrace.com and the discussion forums. But now, Rene, let's get started and show us what you have prepared for us today.
Okay, cool. So just a quick summary of what we will do today, what we will have a look at. It's quite simple. So first of all, we'll start with how we can integrate Jenkins and Dynatrace Cloud Automation to get them work together, getting out the most of both tools. We will see how this integration can help us and reduce our complexities in our pipelines. And at the end, just some quick one-stop shop in integrating quality gates within the same steps while we're doing all the other things. So quite some cool stuff getting done here in just our webinar. But before we begin going into the topics, I would like to hand over again back to you because we have some small head-ups.
Exactly. So we talk a lot about Dynatrace Cloud Automation. You might be new to the topic. So whether you are a DevOps engineer, an SRE, or you want to just make sure that your systems are better automated, your lifecycle of applications. From a Dynatrace perspective, we cover all of these topics as what we call Dynatrace Cloud Automation. And if you want to learn more about this, there's a couple of performance clinics or observability clinics that we have already covered. Typically, we cover everything from what you see here from the bottom up. So release validation, SLO service level objectives, how to automate the validation, how to modernize your legacy delivery. This is also going to be a big part of today. And then the number 5 on the very top is self-healing. So there's a lot of things we cover with Dynatrace Cloud Automation, how we want to modernize your DevOps and SRE approach by putting observability into the driving seat of your orchestration. Today's topic is very focused, I think, on point number 4. But if you're interested in, you'll find all of these recordings on that YouTube link or the bit.ly link. It points you to YouTube. You can also scan the QR code, and this gets you directly to an overview session. But with this, Rene, back to you, because what I really liked about your intro slide earlier, the reason why we're doing this, because we want to reduce complexity in existing pipelines. We don't want to throw Jenkins away. We want to reduce the complexity in existing pipelines and then adding observability as a deciding factor into how these pipelines should be orchestrated. Now, more from you.
So let's just start with where did it come from? It's quite simple. So as you can see, we have a lot of chained pipeline steps. So we just have built pretty much everything within Jenkins, from building, creating the container, putting into a registry, and also directly deploying it to our dev namespaces, getting the tests done through Jenkins, deployed through the staging, and getting directly to production. So what we have built in the past was all within Jenkins, because we said, okay, Jenkins, quite a powerful tool. We can do pretty much anything and everything with Jenkins. So why not use it? Still a good idea, still a good approach from my point of view. But the big mistakes we made is that it's quite hard to troubleshoot this. So whenever you have some changes which are not working anymore, or whenever the pipeline fails for some reason, it gets quite hard to get things running again. It gets quite hard because you always need to start from the early beginning and troubleshoot through the whole daisy chain we built here. So we said we need to change something. We need to get this orchestrated better, and we need to get some outside orchestration and just keep our pipelines smaller, keep them more effective and more focused on what they should do, not just putting all of the stuff somehow chained into a large environment. So this is where did we go? Is that we split our pipelines, we start splitting our pipelines, with just getting something built. This is our first pipeline, just getting our containers. We're mostly with containerized environments, getting our containers built, and either via just a code commit, get the pipeline triggered, or just manually for Jenkins. This doesn't matter here. And what happens then, this is the cool thing where cloud automations comes in place, is that we don't just trigger our other pipelines, but we just give cloud automations the hint, hey, cloud automation, we just have a new build, we just have a new container ready for getting deployed to somewhere. And there is, as you can see, the blue dotted line, the cloud events. We will come up with this within the next slide, because this is some quite cool concept, which is currently worked on to get tools connected on some kind of a standardized way. And anything else is then controlled and orchestrated by cloud automation. So we will just trigger our delivery sequence, and our delivery sequence knows what to do in which stage. So we will first start with a deployment within our dev stage, of course. And you can see here quite some short pipeline where we just deploy our stuff to a given namespace, in our case to the dev namespace, run some checks, and then we send back the finish event to cloud automation. The cloud automation know, hey, this step of our sequence is done, please proceed with the next step. So basically the pipeline doesn't know if we test afterwards or if we do something else afterwards. We just tell cloud automation, hey, we are finished with this step you wanted us to do, and we don't care about anything else. The next step is the test step, where we just test our freshly deployed container if everything is working as planned, have some performance tests, some feature tests maybe in the backend again. Once the test is done, once Jenkins is done with its work, we just let cloud automation evaluate our build with the help of Dynatrace, because we have all of the stuff monitored with Dynatrace. And as you can see here, Matt, already, you not even reduce complexity within the Jenkins pipelines. This is some of the first steps. We just have implemented a quality gate as well. And what's now the cool thing for our devs is, if they just still want to build their stuff with Jenkins, because it's a cool tool for it, but they might do not want Jenkins to trigger our tests, to trigger our JMeter or whatever test tools you're using, we just can easily tell cloud automation, you do not need to trigger Jenkins anymore for this. You can just trigger any other tool. And we still have all the other stuff within Jenkins. We still can work with our preferred tools, and we can just move parts out of it and to move it to any other tool. And as well, of course, the evaluation, in our case, it's done with Dynatrace. And this was something which was not done before, because before we just run our performance test and then we just did some manual comparison. So this was on the fly, that we let evaluate cloud automation, our build. Let's evaluate it with Dynatrace, and then we just have already the result. We'll see this afterwards as well. And then after everything is done, we have just the feedback to the developer who just triggered one commit or triggered the Jenkins pipeline manually on how good this build was due to the evaluation we made. I've mentioned it earlier, there's one thing which is quite interesting here, how this is all working. It's basically based on cloud events or cdEvents. This is a quite new approach of a consistent way to describe event data. So there is the cloud event stuff, and then there's cdEvents based on the cloud events, where we just have a common language between all of the tools we are using, tell them each other what we want to do, what happens. So for all the event-based tools where we want to have triggered something based on an event, there is a common language, and happy that both of them speak those languages. And we can, so with these principles, we can connect all the dots together. Andy, you might want to add something here.
Yes, thank you so much, because I think you nailed it here, that one of the reasons why this is so powerful is because we're also solving the tool interoperability issue. Connecting tools has always been possible, but it's always been hard because every tool has their own API, and therefore you need to know that API, you need to call it, and if the other tool on the other end changes and breaks the API, you need to update your automation scripts or maybe your Jenkins pipelines and plugins. And with us, I mean Dynatrace, donating the core technology of Captain, the core technology behind the orchestration, to the CNCF also allows us to be also part of some other interesting projects in the CNCF space, like cloud events, and also now more recently cdEvents. cdEvents is really a group of organizations, tool vendors that are coming together and really defining a spec for event-based delivery. But not only that, I think it will go beyond that. It will be event-based application lifecycle management. So you will see, if you already look into the project, there are different events already specified from build to test to deploy, and we want to expand it across the whole lifecycle so that we have a common eventing scheme on managing, which make it easier for us to manage the end-to-end lifecycle of applications and then connect tools easily because it's all an open standard. Yeah, that's it from this point. But now back to you, Rene.
Okay, thanks. So let's take a look at how it looks like within the configuration. So we've just prepared something. And as cloud automation basically is already an event-based control plane, we're good to go. And it's quite easy. We will see this afterwards in the demo as well, and to integrate just some basic, simple webhooks. And this, as you can see here, it's quite some from the left to the right. Those webhooks itself describe to events. So they will push an event to the webhook, but they're also subscribed to events. So they're listening to some events. In our case, we have, for this demo, we have a test triggered event and a deployment triggered event. So whenever cloud automation receives this event, they will call the webhook. We can identify and configure some filters and some possibilities. So in our case, we just want to listen only for those events, and we just want to trigger the webhook for those events if they're in a given project or in a given stage. In our case, that's all stages, or for a given service. So we have quite high flexibility on how and when we want to trigger the webhooks based on which event we receive and on the event data which we receive. And if you take a look into the details of such events, it's also quite simple. So you can, of course, define the request method. So if you want to have a post, a put, a get. And the cool thing here as well is cloud automation comes within a built-in secret store. So you do not need to take care about having some kind of unauthorized access or stuff like this. You have just all the secrets in the store. And from my point of view, even more interesting, we can just pull out data of the precedent events. So in our case, it's when we mentioned the first picture, Jenkins triggered our complete sequence. This was already a cloud event. So within this cloud event, there is a data block telling us what is currently, so what new software was currently built, what new container was built, where to get it, in which stage we want to deploy it. So all these informations are within a simple event, within the simple cloud event. And the cloud automation is able to just catch up this data and puts it in the next event. So we can tell whenever we trigger an event, we can tell the receiving side of this event what exactly we want to do. And this makes it quite powerful. And on the Jenkins side, there is, for this specific case, there is a Captain library available. We have the links in one of the last slides as well collected for you guys. And this library helps you a little to create the events for you. So do not need to take care within Jenkins to build these events on your own. There is a library for you doing this, and just two simple steps within one path. And the first step is that we initialize the cloud automation instance that we are aware of, that we talk to someone or want to talk to someone. And at the end of our pipeline, we just tell Jenkins with this simple step that we want to send, in this case, a send deliver triggered event. And as you can see here, there is a project, a service named, there is an image, so what image should be deployed. And this is all it takes within your pipelines to get cloud automation triggered. So having the library installed, it's quite simple, and having those two events within your pipeline, and you're good to go to get cloud automation triggered and do with your build or with your new software whatever you intend to do. Then there is a second part, just to have it completed, is the quality portion. It's again quite simple. It's one step, additional update SLI, SLO. This is not even directly necessary. We just have done it because we just let our developers define their SLIs. So what's important for their piece of software to work perfectly. So we just having in the code repo of the application, we have defined already our SLIs and SLOs. So our metrics, which we would like to have verified by Dynatrace, and our SLOs, just to get the thresholds on what we would like to reach for this given software. We just add this here directly to cloud automation, that they're aware of what they need and what they want to verify. And then at the end, we just again, once the tests are done, so once Jenkins has triggered their JMeter tests or whatever tests we have configured for our testing stages, we will just trigger again cloud automation this time with a different event. We just send an finish event, and we just tell it, okay, there is an event type of test. We have a test event finished, and we need to add some additional payload in this case, because we want to know when has the test started and when was the test finished, that we tell Cloud Automation exactly which time frame they should evaluate to get us some information on how our build was done. So that's it from the slides. Just wanted to keep it short and simple because I really love to show it to you in the tools, what all this makes and what all this looks like in a real environment and not just in some cool screenshots and slides. So we have prepared the Cloud Automation environment with our famous sock shop project, and I will just start with the webhook integration and how this looks like on the Cloud Automation side. So basically, this is what you've seen within the screenshots already as well. So we just subscribe to given events. So we just subscribe to a test event, a deployment event, and for some other demos, have already some rollback events defined. And basically, it's quite, you can define whatever you want here. So this is not limited to this, but for our case, this was suites perfect. And whenever Cloud Automation receives a test triggered event, so this was what we've seen in the last slide, it will trigger our given step. And take a look into it. We can see all the configurations we can do. So with the secret store, and here there's some cool feature where we can just select all the data, which is already mentioned within the given cloud event we have received for our deployment sequence. So we see all the data here, and we can just bring this data again into our webhook and again push it to Jenkins or any other tools with some simple webhook integrations. And when we take a look at our sequence, as you can see, I've already run a lot of sequences. They're usually defined. There are some webinars for Cloud Automation already available. We just defined our shipyard file with 3 stages. We have one dev stage, staging, and the production. And what we can see here when we take a look at the dev stage, in the event payload. So this was the event received by Cloud Automation to get our job done, to get our freshly built image rolled out to our dev environment. So this is what you can see as well as in the integration with the webhook. So there is a data portion where we can see our configuration change, what's happened. So we can see there is a new image build with a build ID, with a build number, which are put in as labels. So you can already put in some backlink URLs to Jenkins directly into this job to get you pointed towards Jenkins, and can just take a look at the build job. If you want to see something or want to troubleshoot something, you can work a lot with labels, which are getting just linked through the complete event chain. So you have all the information always within your sequence on the given event. And once our delivery sequence was triggered, Cloud Automation will trigger our deployment event. So you can see it here. This is the deployment event. We have a webhook service subscribed to deployment events for a specific sequence in a specific stage. So the webhook service was triggered, and we can just see here again the cloud event which was pushed towards Jenkins. So just through the webhook, and again you can see that we just put in all the information we already have, plus some additional information. And what you can see here is then once Jenkins was done, we just see here the result again. So we can receive an event from Jenkins back to our Cloud Automation, telling Cloud Automation, hey guys, we are finished with the deployment. You could go and proceed with your next step. In our case, the next step is the test case, where we again trigger Jenkins. So we can see here again the webhook service started. And after 1 minute, this was quite a short test. After 1 minute, Jenkins told us that they are finished with the tests and you're good to go for the next stage. So there is one interesting thing, because if you take a look at the event for starting the webhook, it looks quite similar to all the other things. And if you take a look at what we received back from Jenkins, we have additional information. We have information if the test has passed in general, so if everything is good, and we have our test time frame. So when did the test start and when was the test finished, all within the event payload. And then we can start the Cloud Automation native evaluation together with Dynatrace to get our build evaluated. So it's just a microservice in this case, and we can, as usual, have a look at how our build has performed compared to previous builds. So what we've done here is with one simple step within our pipeline, have we implemented a quality gate. We have just defined a few SLIs which needs to be validated, but we have defined one. So it's quite a simple step to get some quality gates implemented with just some easy values and get your build compared to the previous build, and you just get a quality gate and a scoring of how good the last build is performing against other builds and in general. So quite an easy step. And once the evaluation is done, in our case, it's all automatic. We say, okay, this is good. The dev stage was working fine. Everything is good. We automatically trigger the staging. So there is not Jenkins involved in this case. So we are automatically triggering the staging environment to get basically all the same steps done. So again, triggering Jenkins for deployment. This time we have a little different event because we have just mentioned to Jenkins that we now want to deploy, and sort of opened the wrong event. So we now just tell Jenkins that we would like to deploy to the staging environment. So it's just with some simple information again within our data block of our cloud event. So we have for dev and staging exactly the same pipeline within Jenkins. We just have some parameters and say, okay, we now do not want to deploy to dev anymore. We want to deploy to staging. And then again, have some tests and the evaluation done of our build. And if everything is working, we are going straight away to production and trigger again our production delivery. So we have a delivery sequence where we just do the deployment. And in this case, after the deployment, we do not evaluate or test anything directly. We just tell Cloud Automation that please wait for 5 minutes after the deployment and then do the evaluation, because after 5 minutes, you might have already some productive traffic on it. Do some evaluation. And once the evaluation fails, we just again can kick off a Jenkins pipeline to do the rollback for us. So if this evaluation would have failed because we're below 75%, we just tell Jenkins again, okay, something bad happened, please fall back to the previous version. So just one pipeline doing this for us. And this is all automated. So completely from dev to production, even the rollback is completely automated, just with some simple cloud events, communicating with, or let the tools communicate with each other. Andy, is there something from your end you want to add? Did I miss something very important for you?
You didn't miss anything. I think you nailed the point here. If you do me a favor and go back to the dev stage here, I think the key point here, what you showed, is that you have basically containerized, or let's say compartmentalized an otherwise large end-to-end Jenkins pipeline into small pieces. Like you have a Jenkins pipeline that can deploy a container, it's parameterized. You have a Jenkins pipeline that can run some tests. And now you're using cloud automation to chain these pipelines all together. And in the middle, always use observability to evaluate how the environment is doing and compared to the SLOs. And if everything is good, it basically reuses the same Jenkins pipelines to then push that artifact into the next stage. So what this means is, and I think this is why I liked your first slide so much, where you said, instead of building big monolithic pipelines, you're breaking it into smaller pieces, which individually are smaller, are easier to maintain. But I think what we also need to understand is that in order for this to really work, if you do it right, you also want to make sure that these pipelines you build are parameterized, that you can say, I'm reusing one Jenkins pipeline to, let's say, deploy into any type of environment. This is why you can reuse the same thing, right? And overall, that means you have fewer moving pieces, fewer automation scripts, easier to maintain, and everything is orchestrated and always evaluated against your observability platform. And this is what I like about it. It's cool.
Thank you very much. So again, just a look at the slide deck of what I've mentioned previously is we have collected the links for you. They will be provided to you afterwards as well. And if you just take a look to one slide again, just to summarize what we've seen right now, is again, to click through it. We have integrated Jenkins with Dynatrace Cloud Automation with just the ease of the cloud events, which are still under development and getting further and further, getting way more out of it. We have reduced the complexity in our Jenkins platform, as Andy just mentioned. As you can see here, I really find this an just incredible number. If you take a look at the GitHub screenshot, where you can see how many lines of code we have removed just with integrating Jenkins and cloud automation together. And we even have improved our quality gates with just one easy step and implementing the quality gates, because we already had all the tools in place, all the things are already monitored, all the things are, as mentioned, Andy, are already under observability. We just need to put the dots together with just one easy step in integrating the quality gates.
That's really cool. Hey, Rene, just a couple of quick questions. I know they always come up from the community. Can you do me a favor and can you go back to your browser?
Sure.
So a lot of questions always come up. So what is this and how does this compare with Captain? Just FYI, Captain is the CNCF project. So Dynatrace donated the core technology behind this orchestration to the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. That means if you want to, you can use Captain yourself, run it and operate it yourself on Kubernetes, or as Rene is doing here, is leveraging the SaaS-based hosting we do as part of your Dynatrace platform. So if you're a Dynatrace customer, then you can get Dynatrace Cloud Automation as well that gives you this automation capability. The second thing is a lot of people always ask, so where does this data really come from? I think you have a Dynatrace screen open somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. So that means behind the scenes, right, there's Dynatrace. Dynatrace monitors and observes your environment, either through our agent technology or through ingesting data through Prometheus, open telemetry. You can push data through our metrics ingest. There's all sorts of things you can pull in, WMI, SNMP. This means this not only works for your cloud native applications, but pretty much for everything that you have. The other thing, Rene, I see also you have Jenkins open there. I should see.
So we can, if you take a look at Jenkins, so this is just some our demo Jenkins where all the old pipelines are still there, not quite used often. So you can see here we had a lot of old pipelines, like most of them failed most of the time. So we had a single one for production canary update, a single pipeline for deploy to staging. And if I even go into my SockShop folder, there are even more pipelines. So there's the old cards pipeline. This was the old long pipeline we have seen in the screenshots, and then there are our free build, deploy, and performance, or it's test in this case, just the free short pipelines, which doing all the work for us, which was done previously for many pipelines chained with each other and automatically triggered. So just the smooth and simple pipelines, which are now in place for getting the things done. And, sorry, go ahead.
No, and I'm just saying, and I think this shows it nicely as well. And just repeating, what we want to show you here is, again, Jenkins is an awesome tool, and take it to whatever capacity you want to use it for. But if you end up building larger and larger pipelines because you want to add in yet another step, and you want to add in observability checks, and you want to add in this and this, then think about maybe just use Jenkins for things that you have already invested in Jenkins scripts in, let's say the building and the deployment, maybe also some tests, but then really build and shape these pipelines in a way that they can easily be reused, kind of like, make them think about it like breaking the monolith into smaller services. And now you need an orchestrator on top of it. And this is where cloud automation comes in. Yeah, that's what I want to say. And that's really good. All right, Rene. I would say let's put our names up again. So in case anybody wants to reach out to us, there's always an easy way. You can find us on the Dynatrace community. You can find us on social media. And I know, Rene, you are very active as well, especially in the DACH region. So that's Germany, Austria, Switzerland. You're working for NTT DATA. You're doing a lot of these engagements also, like helping organizations going through that transformation. And if anybody has an interest in reaching out to you as an expert or your company as an expert, as a service provider, then please do so. With this,
thank you very much, Andy.
Thank you. Ciao, ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye.